Good afternoon. Welcome to the Bob Unger Show. We have a interesting guest whose name I hope I get right. Andrew CRAPUCHETTES.
Nailed it.
Close. And Hooked on Phonics worked for me. And he has a company called Red Balloon. And it's not red in the communist sense. But from what I understand, Andrew, basically what your company does is aid people who, because of their desire to speak freely, and not be destroyed by the fascists who now control corporate America, you kind of help them find an environment where they can feel like a free human being.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
No. Yeah. So Red Balloon, it's based on my story actually, because there are a lot of people who either have to keep their head down in corporations today, or it might cost them their job if they actually live their values and speak their mind. I was the CEO of a large corporation, hundreds of employees, offices all around the world. And my board, and I actually helped found the business, but unfortunately, when you sell a business, you also lose control of the business sometimes. And my board decided I was a little too conservative and a little too Christian for their liking, which is probably a story in and of itself. So 9 months ago, I found myself with a much clearer calendar as an unemployed person. But I'd been given skills and abilities, and I thought, how do I use those to really bless other people, particularly in my situation? So started redballoon.work. It's called Red Balloon. You're exactly right. Not in the communist sense, although I do live in Moscow, Idaho, which is kind of ironic, right? So here I am in Moscow at Idaho, starting a company called Red Balloon. It's called Red Balloon because if you've ever been on a hot air balloon, it's a little bit terrifying and a lot bit fun, kind of like looking for a new job. And also, if you think about those old stories of people escaping from East Germany on the hot air balloon, I just think it's a fun story, maybe for another day. But balloons allow you to travel. They allow you to travel quietly sometimes. So there's all kinds of great connections with the balloon there. And then red, yeah, people are moving to red states or red regions of blue states because they are looking for freedom. We're seeing the deurbanization of America in a lot of ways right now because conservatives are waking up. They're tired of being in the large woke city or the large woke corporation that does not respect their freedom. And so we want to help facilitate that. And then .work, just to make it clear that the red is for, conservative areas, not communists, because .com sounds a little bit like communist to me. And so it's .work because work is actually good and satisfying. And you're absolutely right. It is a matchmaking service for conservative employment. So if you're a conservative employer or a conservative job seeker, this is the place for you.
And when did your epiphany occur, and how did it occur? Because usually people like yourself have a certain point in life where an epiphany occurs and they make changes.
Yeah, well, it's actually really funny. So when I left the company that I was running, which honestly was a bit of a painful process, right? When you run something for 20 years and you were a founder and you're kind of ousted because you won't walk away from your very strong conservative and Christian values, that's a painful process. So I was just going to take a year off and focus on, I'm doing a housing development. I have some real estate in various places. I'm like, I'm going to be a real estate guy for a year before I do anything else. But then a friend was like, hey, you should do a job board just so that conservatives in little Moscow, Idaho can find good jobs. I'm like, oh, sure, that'll be fun because I love technology. Super easy to whip up a job board website. So I did. And I start getting these notes from people all around the country saying, hey, when's Red Balloon going to come to our area? Because we want freedom too. From Canadians, from people in Italy and Austria and Australia saying, hey, when's Red Balloon coming here? Because we want freedom. I'm like, look, it's not. I'm just a little job board. If you could leave me alone, I'm going to work on real estate. After about a month of me digging in my heels and saying, no, I'm really not going to focus on anything beyond Idaho, it was clear to me that there was a huge demand. The other thing that happened at that moment was our dear president actually became my best sales rep because he did a vaccine mandate. And I didn't even have to pay him apart from all the taxes that I pay. So I didn't have to pay a commission to a great sales rep. He told everyone they need to get vaccinated. Well, there's a lot of Americans that have some real questions about that vaccine, and we're willing to stand and maybe lose their job based on that issue, which I think is great. And so all of a sudden, Red Balloon blew up. We were adding 100 employers a day. We were adding many tens of thousands of job seekers every day. It was, I have a little crack team here at Red Balloon, which is now a larger team. But it was one of those moments, it felt like the balloon was taking off, but none of us were in the basket. We were all holding on for dear life on the outside. If you've ever been an entrepreneur starting a business, it's crazy. But luckily I've done it before, and God was good, and we survived all that. And so we are now at the point where we have over 1,800 employers who have, and this is in about 6 months, over 1,800 employers who have signed up, and every one of them has signed a pledge that said, you know what, I believe that the Constitution still matters, and that I should respect the freedom of my employees or my future employees to make a good decision. And my employees should have a conversation with their doctor, not their HR department, about what they put in their body. Or they can decide if they don't want to put on pronouns or any of the other craziness. They don't want to go through CRT training or DRI training or any of the other alphabet soup of stuff that happens in corporations today. They don't have to at my company. So over 1,800 employers, many hundreds, over 700,000 job seekers have come to Red Balloon to find each other and find freedom. And I've run a lot of businesses for many years, and this is the only business I've been part of where I get unsolicited thank you notes from perfect strangers every single day. People saying, you just saved my marriage because we now have a great job with a conservative employer that actually shares our worldview and is not jamming the wokeism down my throat. Another guy who was a 25-year vet of IBM, and he went through a very painful process of losing his job there over some of the woke ideology and policies. And he found a new job at redballoon.work, and he wrote just a wonderful letter. And at the end of it, he's like, I feel like I've been redeployed, right? I am now where I'm supposed to be. Even though it was a painful process, the end is a really good story. So it's been really fun.
What are the prototypical employers or companies that want to do business with you?
Most of them are smaller, right? You're not going to get the IBMs and the Xeroxes or the Amazons of the world. In fact, that's where all the best employees are coming from. So most of them are small. We do have some larger businesses. So, you look at companies like Gavin DeBecker and Associates, which is the world's leading private security company with like 500 former special forces guys. He protects Joe Rogan and lots of Supreme Court justices and A-list actors and billionaires. He finds that the best type of people are coming through redballoon.work because they're people that just want to work. They don't want to turn the workplace into a political activism location. They want to focus on bringing value to their employer, bringing value to customers, and getting back to the joy of just a good, hard work.
Very interesting. Have you been on any national TV programs?
Oh yeah, this is when Biden came out with his little thing. I got to jump on Fox and Friends and Stu Varney and a bunch of other ones. And it's kind of funny because liberty shouldn't be newsworthy in America, right? It should just be something we can take for granted. But unfortunately, liberty and freedom is newsworthy in America. So I've been very fortunate to get to tell a lot of people in front of a lot of cameras about what we're doing at Red Balloon, because it's a fun party. We're just having a lot of fun. In fact, we launched a game at redballoon.work called Pronoun Landmines. And the point of the game is to poke fun at the wokeness that's happening in the world today. So we're having a blast, and lots of people are talking about it.
Isn't it ironic that my people, the Jews, are celebrating Passover, which of course celebrates God's promise to liberate them from Egypt and bring them into the promised land.
Yep.
After they stop on the way at Mount Sinai. And yet most people today are willing slaves.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, and part of that is comfort, right? I think one of the big American temptations is peace and prosperity are more important than freedom or liberty. And that is actually pulling our nation apart, I think, in a lot of ways, because people are willing to give up almost anything as long as they can be prosperous. And honestly, that's not how our nation was founded. and our nation will not do well if people just give up all their liberties, because at some point you lose prosperity as well. You look at communist countries, right? It sounds all great to be taken care of, but then at some point, it's a miserable existence. So we want to get back to freedom. We want to hold the line on that front. Yeah, and remember,
Wouldn't,
and yeah, go ahead.
wouldn't you say that that's because the economics requires morality? Because a free market society requires people who have a conscience and who
Yep.
care about the contractual commitments they make and want to adhere to them. And if you take that away, if you take that, in Judaism, it says the fear of God is the beginning of all wisdom.
Yep. Amen.
And when you lose that fear of God, you lose wisdom, and you therefore lose everything else.
That's right. No, if you lose your moral standing, if you don't have a God that owns the standard for you, at some point everybody creates their own standard, and why wouldn't you want to enslave other people to make as much money as you could, right? And I think if you look at the history of woke stuff in the corporations today, a lot of that wokeism came from, if you look all the way back at Occupy Wall Street. That was in that time period, large corporations were considered the bad guy, right? And so I think a lot of these companies were like, okay, how do we beat that PR game? And so they looked around and said, who has the biggest microphone? And we all know that's mainstream media. And then mainstream media loves woke ideology. So if we can virtue signal to the mainstream media that we hate all the things, and that's where ESG comes out of. That's where all this comes out of it. Actually, you can trace a lot of it back to that kind of Occupy Wall Street, where corporations decided we need to genuflect to the woke ideology, because then we can get away with murder or bad things, not necessarily murder, but we can get away with all kinds of bad things. And the media will leave us alone because we're talking about the environment. We're talking about sexual orientations and skin color and crazy stuff. So it's an interesting transition. I also, the Passover is such a wonderful story because, children of Israel, it was painful to leave Egypt, right? And I think that's what a lot of conservatives are waking up to right now. It's very difficult to go get freedom, but it absolutely was, the founding of the nation in a lot of ways. I mean, obviously back to Abraham, but that whole process is what I think a lot of conservatives are going through right now. They're on an exodus out of the big woke companies, and that's the deurbanization of America we're seeing right now.
Well, if you read two books, one book is called Wall Street and the Rise of the Bolshevik Revolution by Sir Anthony Sutton. The other book is called The Strawberry Statement by James Cunis. If you read those books, you'll find that the communists are the rich and vice versa.
Yep.
Communism is wonderful for the rich.
Yeah.
Make sure that nobody can ever become rich, but the people who already are rich, in economics, they call that the Cantillon effect. When the Fed creates money out of thin air, it benefits the people who get it first. By the time it filters down to the average people, they're spending $10 on a loaf of bread.
That's right.
So they get hurt the worst by all this. And it's really a money transference from the working class to the rich, putting the working class on universal basic income.
Oh, yeah. And during COVID, there was so much transfer of wealth. It's communism is all about, everyone's equal. We're just a little more equal.
Yeah.
Or
exactly.
it's the pig and the chicken deciding what they're going to have for breakfast. And for the pig, it's a little more life-changing.
Exactly. What about the demographics geographically of the people you deal with? Are they more in one part of the country than another?
Yeah, I mean, this is probably not surprising, but our highest concentration of job seekers are in California and New York, right?
What a shock.
Yeah, and they're looking for remote jobs or willing to travel jobs, right? Or willing to relocate jobs. There's just a lot of people who are looking to get out of those big urban areas. I mean, California's had a net out migration since 2013 every single year, and it only accelerated through all of this. So that's where you're going to have your biggest concentration. Honestly, our employers are all over the place. We've got a lot of concentration in Dallas and in Phoenix, and honestly, in a lot of red states like Florida. So it's, again, I would call us a very new job board, a new job site, but we've been really encouraged by the response. We're not as big as Indeed out there, but the employers that are hiring off Red Balloon, they're like, look, it's hard to screen for culture fit, but everybody we're getting off Red Balloon is a great culture fit.
And what about you personally? Have there been people who have tried to retaliate against you or hurt you in any way?
No, I mean, I've had the occasional hit piece written on me or on Red Balloon. The worst one was there was a South Carolina newspaper, and the guy was so mad about Red Balloon. He thought it was a public health menace. And he went on to say that everybody who uses Red Balloon should be forced to use a yellow armband. Like, he said that in print. I'm like, do you not, like, what are you doing?
Does it say Jude on it? Jude?
I guess, like, do you want us to wear a star? Like, what do you want to do? So it's crazy how the liberals are simply not willing to have a conversation anymore. It used to be that we could have a conversation. I have a lot of friends who I violently disagree with, and I'm happy to have a conversation about sticky issues like homosexuality or abortion or any of these things, and then still go out and have a beer with them after that and still be friends, right? But unfortunately, in America today, it's really hard to have a conversation if you don't line up perfectly with what the woke mob is asking you to say.
A guy you could talk to is Bobby Kennedy Jr.
Mm-hmm.
He believes in freedom, believes in free speech. I probably disagree with him on a plethora of issues.
Absolutely.
But he has what I would call intellectual integrity.
Right.
Another guy is Glenn Greenwald, who I disagree with on moral issues vehemently, but still, he is a journalist who has integrity. And another one is Matt Taibbi. Those are names that I read all the time, even though I agree with a multitude of things they say. But I know that whatever they're writing, they believe in it.
Right.
It's sincere. And that kind of person, as you said, we can have a discussion. I don't have to walk in lockstep with you, and you don't have to lock. Freedom is what this is all about, and integrity, and this arcane document called the Constitution, which most people wouldn't recognize it if I smacked them over the head with it.
Unfortunately, that's a little bit true. And that's one of the things we actually make all the employers sign that pledge, is that they believe the Constitution still matters. And the job seekers do the same thing. And so it's been a nice filtering effect for a lot of our employers, because they're like, man, I had one employer tell me every person I hire off redballoon.work is cleansing to our culture, because it basically, they're hiring just hardworking people who aren't trying to push a worldview, who aren't using the workplace as their platform to push their ideology. They're using the workplace to just work, right? And when you actually start, asking people to agree to the Constitution, agree to freedom, and to leave each other alone, it's a much healthier work environment for everybody.
Absolutely. You have a family, I assume?
I got 5 kids and 3 massive dogs. I grew up in California. I did the .com thing. I got tired of the traffic and the liberals, and so I moved to beautiful Idaho, and I live on 60 acres, 10-minute drive from the office, can see 100 miles from my front porch. It's the good life, people. Get out of those big cities. It's fun.
Yeah, that's great. And where do your kids, I don't mean to ask you the exact school or homeschool, where
they go to a private Christian school that I'm actually on the board of, helped found. I'm actually on the board of a national Christian school organization called ACCS, focused on just helping families get their kids out of government school and keep them, right? The birth rate in America has been below 2.1 most years since 1971. And the group that's having kids, unfortunately, are sending them to the government school system and then losing their kids. And so my encouragement to people is enjoy your life, but make sure you're investing your time in your kids and in their education, because when you do, you're going to get huge dividends in the long term.
Are you familiar with Alex Newman?
I am.
Oh, okay. He's a great guy, and he wrote the book Crimes of the Educators. And has he ever interviewed you on a show?
Not yet.
Okay, I'm going to call him and tell him to do so, and
That'd be awesome.
I'll also get you on Newsmax.
Oh, that would be awesome as well. Thank
It's
you.
on the dial, at least in the New York area. It's on the dial right next to Fox. So you have Fox and you have Newsmax.
Yeah.
Or, but you're a great guy. I really respect what you're doing. And if I ever get out to Idaho, which probably a little cold.
It's a little cold, but if you make it out, we'd love to host you. We'd love to feed you dinner. And it's, it's beautiful. It is really the good life.
Yeah. Well, God bless you, man. Really.
All right.
We need
Thanks for having me. And again, everybody who's listening, go to redballoon.work, tell your friends about it, because people need freedom right now. And the more that you can be courageous, the more you're going to give courage to other people.
Amen.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it.
God bless you.
Bye.